9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now live.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from the campus of Westfield State University, this is 89.5 FM, WSKB, Westfield. Underwriting support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business for the Greater Westfield communities. Informing, educating, advocating, the Chamber provides opportunities for members to make meaningful connections on local, regional, and state levels. For more information on the Chamber's many events, workshops, and programs, as well as the benefits of membership, visit westfieldbiz.org. The Chamber focuses on the most important economy, yours.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 6:01. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses and WCPC cable channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and I'm in the studio this morning with the chairman of the board, Pete Coles. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning.
It's been a few weeks. Thank you for doing a couple of best of shows for me the last few weeks. Let me get my life back in order here.
Yeah, no problem.
It's been a challenging winter, to say the least. But we are back. We are back live. So tell us, kind of.
Harry didn't even know you were gone. Harry's like, I didn't even know Tina was gone. She goes, I tuned in on my way down, and then things were sounding great.
Things sounded great. Well, I thank you so much for last week's best of. I had requested that you replay the interview that I did with Francina Brown, and she is with the organization Families Against Violence in Springfield. And, I listened to that as I was getting ready for work last week, and, that was probably one of the best interviews I've ever done. It was a challenging interview. I mean, she really laid a lot of pretty heavy.
Yeah, she laid it out there.
She did.
I didn't say a word during that interview because she laid it bare.
She did. It was pretty raw, and I appreciate her honesty. Having had two sons that were murdered separately, years apart. I mean. And she has been instrumental in the organization Families Against Violence out of Springfield. So thank you again for replaying that, Pete.
One of them was a little bit of got himself into the wrong circumstances, and one was just wrong place, wrong time.
Wrong place, wrong time. The very first one, that was her. Yeah, her. I think it was her second oldest or third to oldest son, and wrong place, wrong time.
But people don't think Springfield is that kind of a city, and there are parts. Being in the news, there are parts that are.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are parts that definitely are. I mean, I was in the news business in that city for a couple of years, and there were spots where you tell the reporter, don't get out of the car.
Yeah.
I'll go out and quickly shoot something.
Yep.
Don't get out. The neighborhood's quiet. I said, yeah, but there was just a shooting here about an hour ago. There's still tents. I'll do what I need to do. Don't get out of the vehicle.
Yep.
And they'd be like, what?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That was men or women. It didn't make a difference.
Yeah. And
don't get out of the car.
Yeah. And sometimes I think some of the younger reporters, and, we have a lot of younger reporters. You turn on the local news and, a lot of them are, and they just don't have the life experience.
But they're also one-man bands, too.
Yes.
They're shooting it, too. So they don't have that choice.
Yeah.
They don't have that luxury.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, so that's that. And so what's new in your life, Pete? I haven't seen, gosh, I'm trying to think. It was the end of January when I was here last.
Yes.
Very end of January. Harry did his show. So what's going on? Anything new and special?
I went away at the end of January for my birthday. Did we cover that?
We did not cover that. What you were going to go.
Right.
How was it?
Went out to the Adirondacks.
Yes. You were going to do a train ride.
Right. Went out on Friday night. Did the train ride on Saturday. That was a blast. 20 miles out, 20 miles back. S'mores at the station out there with campfires and hot cocoa and stuff.
Nice.
And the car was great. It was tight upstairs because it's an old style dining car and the dome.
Yep.
So we rode out on the dome. I was uncomfortable, and then we were like, "Oh, there's a table downstairs with regular chairs. Let's go to that."
Okay.
And the staff was like, "Yeah, that table's free. Go right ahead."
Yeah. Nice.
Had a good time. There was a brewery right across the street from Union Station in Utica.
Okay.
So once we got off the train, we stopped there for a brew and a beverage.
Yep.
And then had a great dinner at a steakhouse, almost like a steakhouse restaurant in Cooperstown. We were heading back to our hotel.
Yep.
Then we did the pool, and then we did the steakhouse.
Okay.
So they had a heated pool.
Nice.
Yeah. Soaking in a hot tub in the middle of winter when it's freezing cold out is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I bet.
And then the next morning, Omegang Brewery, which is one of the oldest breweries in the world, opened a place in New York State.
Okay.
Because the water was very similar to what they had in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And the brewery company dates back to 1549. But they've opened a brewery here. It's been open about 20 years. But they had a brunch bingo. Okay. On Sundays, and they kind of do it for the locals.
Yep.
And the lady that did it was very raucous, and it was very fun, and we had a blast. And the food was excellent, and the beer was excellent. So
great.
We had a great. Then we just came home. We had a great time.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a perfect weekend. So that was. Did you go Friday to Sunday, or just Saturday to like an overnight?
Friday. We left Friday, got up there Friday night, and then we came back on Sunday afternoon.
Nice. And that, how long did it take you to get up there, Pete?
It's only about 3 hours.
Nice. 3
hours. Another hour to Utica, but I stayed in Cooperstown because it's kind of like the Cape, and this is off season for them.
Yes.
So the rooms were less expensive and the hotels are still really nice. So we had a good time.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh, I'm glad. That's perfect. Wonderful. Well, Gary and I unfortunately had a death in the family, had to go down to New Jersey a few weeks ago. But when we go down there, we have stayed a few times at a bed and breakfast. And Gary was there last year for 4 or 5 days. I couldn't. I ended up having to come back with my sister-in-law who was having some health problems. But anyway, long story short, right before Gary stayed there, it's called the Wooden Duck Bed and Breakfast in Andover, New Jersey. And right before he stayed there, it actually had changed owners. So that was a gift from me to him for Christmas. We were supposed to be there together, but that didn't happen. But that's okay. He had some friends flying in. We had a good friend from Texas flying in. We have friends in New Jersey and relatives, of course. So it turned out that it was kind of his getaway. But so when I purchased the gift certificate, it was with the previous owners, and Gary and I had stayed there together with the previous owners. So this was a new owner, and of course, because Gary was there for 4 or 5 days, and it was last August. He spent a lot of time with her, got to know her. She got to know him. Our friend Jeff, who flew in from Texas, wasn't staying there. He was staying with his sister, but he came over, and he had a lot of the history of the area. So anyway, they had a gay old time. So when we went back under, less pleasant,
Looks like a full response going out for the fire department.
Oh, really?
Looks like the station just emptied out.
Oh yeah. Okay. There you go. Yes, I can see that on the. Oh yeah.
That's the third piece to go by, so that's a full response.
Okay.
Anyways.
Something going on. So Gary and I were back at the same inn, a few weeks ago under different circumstances, obviously not as pleasant. And the owner was so nice. When she heard that we were there for a funeral, she upgraded us to, like the nicest room in the house and gave us a bereavement rate. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so nice. But she was telling us that this coming April, late March, early April, is the 1-year anniversary of her taking ownership, and she is going to be changing the name of the bed and breakfast. And I think she had done, sort of a contest among people who had come. So anyway, when we were leaving, she said to us, for my 1-year anniversary, I'm inviting. She has 8. I think there are 8 rooms at the inn. She actually took one. There were 9, and she took one, and she made it kind of a workspace. So if people needed to, work virtually or whatever, they would, could have a space to do that. So she's got 8 rooms there now. So she said, I'm inviting 8 of my favorite guests that I've had over the last year. And for a weekend, she said the first night will be, no charge for the first night. So Friday night will be free. And then Saturday night, you'll pay whatever room you get. And she's putting together, she said there's a really cool concert going on in one of the small towns locally that Saturday night. And there's a farm-to-table restaurant. So she thought, everybody might want to get together. So anyway, she told us that we were on the invite list. So, which made Gary feel pretty special because, there were only 8 couples or people being invited.
Yep.
So she gave us a date and everything, and it just sounded so much, just like so much fun. So we came back here. I said to Gary, looked at what my work calendar. Honest to God, Pete, you'll be shocked. I didn't even look at what I had to do or anything. I took that date that Friday, and I just crossed it off and said, we're going down there for this because it's such a, just reminded me of what you were just describing with your weekend. It's a beautiful, beautiful bed and breakfast. The meals are fabulous. They totally worked around Gary's, gluten-free, dairy-free diet stuff. Just wonderful.
My girlfriend's starting to get in the habit now of actually thinking ahead like I do. Mm-hmm. She's like, oh, my dad's birthday's in March on the 24th. Don't sign up for that day for work. So I'm all hooked.
Yeah.
So now I got it conditioned in her brain saying, if you want to do something, you got to tell me a couple weeks out. If it's last minute, maybe I could get the time off.
Yeah.
But they count on me over there to work that 7 to 3 shift on a weekend. So it's like,
exactly. So
it's kind of one of those tough things.
Plan ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So plan ahead. So I'm excited about that. But I'm glad
Good.
that your
No
weekend.
Work.
Yeah. No week. I'm at work.
No laptop that has VPN capabilities.
I don't. You know what? I don't
nothing.
do that. I don't take. I personally, I don't own a laptop. I have one at. We have one at work that we purchased during COVID,
saying.
but. I don't. Nope. That stays at work. We share it among the staff for Zooming purposes and all that stuff. But Nope. If I'm not, you know what? I kind of feel like I spend enough time in my office, so
Right.
I don't bring my office home.
That's exactly.
That is one of those things that I will not do. So good to go on that. Dr. Lovelace is joining us this morning. I don't know if I don't see him in the wings yet, but
Not yet, no.
Okay, he will be joining us this morning, and for the first hour, hopefully. And Jen Giffune, our resident registered dietitian, will be joining us second hour. At around a little after 7. So this is the topic for the day, and this was a request from Dr. Lovelace. February is Heart Health Awareness Month, so kind of everything that we talk about today is going to have to do with heart health. So let's talk a little bit about that as an intro. So it's February, American Heart Month, a time when the nation spotlights heart disease, the number one killer of Americans. And it has been for many years, and it still is. And I think that's why Dr. Lovelace really wants to discuss this. President Lyndon B. Johnson, among the millions of people in the country who'd had heart attacks, issued the first proclamation in 1964. Since then, U.S. presidents have annually declared February American Heart Month. Throughout the month, the American Heart Association's Heart to Heart, Why Losing One Woman is Too Many campaign will raise awareness about how 1 in 3 women are diagnosed with heart disease annually. You know, years ago, we used to think this was just, it was predominantly men, but we are seeing different trends the last several years. This year, the federally designated event is even more important due to the impact of the coronavirus on the public's heart health, including potential harmful effects on the heart and vascular system, according to recent research. Also, during the COVID-19 pandemic, many people have delayed or avoided going to hospitals for heart attacks and strokes, netting poorer outcomes and prompting the AHA, the American Heart Association, to create Don't Die of Doubt, a national awareness campaign that reminds people that hospitals are the safest place to go when you have symptoms. And while in lockdown, more people engaged in unhealthy lifestyle behaviors such as eating poorly, drinking more alcohol, and limiting physical activity that can contribute to heart disease. Meanwhile, heart disease continues to be the greatest health threat to Americans and is still the leading cause of death worldwide, according to the American Heart Association's Heart Disease and Stroke Statistics 2021 update. The update, published in the association's flagship journal Circulation, reports that nearly 18.6 million people across the globe died of cardiovascular disease in 2019, the latest year for which worldwide statistics are calculated. That's a 17.1% increase over the past decade. We're going in the wrong direction, folks. We don't want to be going up. And 523.2 million cases of cardiovascular disease were reported in 2019, a 26.6% increase over 2010.
He's walking in.
Good. During American Heart, I have issues with my microphone this morning, Pete. We're going to have to
Got to go over
play
the
with
top
this.
now.
Got to go over the top.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll figure that out on the break. During American Heart Month, the AHA and other organizations reinforce the importance of heart health, the need for more research, and efforts to ensure that millions of people live longer and healthier. And here's what I want to finish this with, and when we bring Dr. Lovelace in here in a few minutes, this is where we're going to go with this. In most cases, heart disease is preventable when people adopt a healthy lifestyle, which includes not smoking, maintaining a healthy weight, controlling blood sugar and cholesterol, treating high blood pressure, getting at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity a week, and getting regular checkups. So, there are some things that are not as preventable. Heart disease is as preventable. So we need to talk about that. And with that, we are going to bring Dr. Lovelace in here, and he has a new theme song. Where's Pete? Where are you?
I'm ready.
Are you back there? Are you ready? He has a new theme song, right?
Yes.
And you're ready with the theme song?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm all over the map with this thing. So this was actually written and sung by his father-in-law. We're going to talk about that. Yes, I'm getting the thumbs up from Dr. Lovelace here. So let's bring him in with his new theme song, which is Call the Doctor. We'll be back.
this monkey on my back, I'd like nipping at my heels, turning on my wheels. What's this pain in my chest? No, I really don't want to gas. Appointment overdue. See, $28 when I woke up yesterday, and I can't remember if I took my meds today. It's alright, I won't remember anyway. Rocking like a two-step, then call the doctor. Then call the doctor. So they got a little foot pain, unexpected weight gain. It's time to refrain from what you gain. A little lost in your cup, sounding bites, that's what's up from an overly small body. You see, I can't tell you that you really need to learn. It's no fun walking around when you got hot burn. Alright, it's time now that you really need to go and call the doctor. Call the doctor.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 6:18. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses and WCPC Cable Channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and thank you, Pete, for fixing my microphone. Now I understand what you mean when you were saying over the top. I'm like, over the top. What's over the top? I get it now. So so I'm less discombobulated, less stressed out, better for my heart. So in the background, we have Pete Coles, and here with me in the studio, we have Dr. Akinyele Lovelace, primary care physician with Family Medicine Associates here in Westfield in the pretty pink building on Route 20. That looks like it's right out of Miami.
Tubbs, get the car.
There you go. All right, on cue. So it is February's Heart Health Awareness Month. So we have like a lot of stuff to talk about, Dr.
That we
Lovelace.
do.
Yeah,
That
we do. We do.
Start, yeah.
So where would you like to start?
I guess we should start with the basics.
Yeah.
Right. Like I guess from my perspective, I would be like, all right, so let's talk about the key things that we have to keep in mind. You know, heart disease is one of the largest killers in America. So I think that's one thing to kind of take into account. But I think we also have to just kind of remember, like, wait a minute, what are we talking about when we talk about heart disease?
Yeah.
Right. So I think the key things we have to just keep in mind is when we talk about things like a heart attack, right? What is a heart attack? A heart attack is when the heart is not getting enough blood supply. When we talk about things like a stroke, well, what's a stroke? Well, when the brain isn't getting the right amount of blood supply. And then when we talk about, well, what is blood pressure? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Well, blood pressure is how blood moves throughout your body. And how do we measure that, right? Like, and how do we fix that, right? I think all of those questions
And why do we care? Like, why is it important? You know, what do all those numbers mean?
What do the numbers mean, right? And I think that's part of the conversation that we should start to have. And then think about the things that we could actually do in our daily life that could be impactful, right? And I think those are the key things to kind of start having the conversation about. And then finally, like, what are the things that we're doing now in medicine, or what are the things that we're finding to be of value that's showing to be effective in actually bringing down blood pressures outside of maybe just giving medications. So I think that's kind of where I would like to see the conversation go when we start talking about heart awareness and being heart healthy.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting. So I'll share this with you. So last night, my husband Gary said to me, so who's on the show tomorrow? I said, well, we got all kinds of people coming in. I said, I have Dr. Lovelace. I said, I got a double decker here. And then I've got Jen Giffune, our dietitian who's going to be coming in. So I said, the whole focus is going to be on heart health. Of course, when Jen comes in, we'll talk about, nutrition and so forth. And so when Gary found out that you were coming on, he said, so he goes, well, my guess is that he's going to, talk about the importance of medication and getting, blood pressure down with medication and so forth. I said to him, have you listened to my show when Dr. Lovelace is on? And he said, well, he's usually sleeping. Yeah. So I said, that is probably not the direction that we're going to go. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, really. And, it was funny. I just had an appointment with a brand new doctor that I'm working with, gynecologist that I'm working with. And and I was telling Gary this last night. I just had this appointment a couple days ago. And she asked me about exercise. She said, do you exercise? And I said, I do. And she said, what do you do? And I said, I run, I walk. And she said, okay. I said, and I am religious about stretching. I do half an hour of stretching and curls and so forth every day, like 6 to 6:30 before I get ready. But it was funny, Dr. Lovelace, because she said to me, what about strength training? And I said, yeah, not so much. She goes, okay, then that's what we need to focus on. When I read what she gave me, you get this little printout of your visit and it has all the basic stuff. There were like 3 pages on, how to work on some strength training stuff at home. You don't have to join a gym. And I just thought, this is so great. I feel like this is so great that this is where medicine is going. It's not like take out your script pad and, here it is. It's like, let's work on some of this other stuff.
So here's a funny story. Go. When I get into exercise. So, sure. I never pay attention to any reviews, right?
Okay.
But one day, my wife and a friend of hers, for some apparent reason, they decided to look me up, and there was a comment about me, and it pretty much read, this guy's an arrogant, pompous, whatever. And the reason was because he told, I told him that I couldn't do any exercise. And so he tossed me, or I think she said he threw the tissue box at me and I caught it. And he says, well, see, there you go. There's exercise, right? And so it was so interesting that person was upset with me about that. But, and understandably so, sometimes I can be that way, but I feel like the idea and the concept should be strength training and exercise should be able to accomplish within a very small range of place, right? Yeah. So a lot of times people will come to me and they will tell me, Dr. Lovelace, I'm going to get myself together. I'm going to get heart healthy. I'm going to go to the gym. Yeah. And I'm like, oh God, why? And no offense. I love, I've got friends that go to the gym. I too go to the gym as if it's a place that like it's going to church, right? So, exactly. But it's like, but I get it. But I also like to encourage people and say, hey, listen, if you can do it, really the size of this table if people are watching, or a size of a yoga mat, like within this space, if you can create some type of routine that's transportable, right? I think that's the ideal thing to do. The Super Bowl just came and went, and people always talk about having a good defense, right? And defense and running game is portable. And so the same thing should be applied to how you go about your exercise, right? Like it should be something that's portable, because then it's something you can consistently do. And I think that's the key message. And so, I had no intention of coming here to talk about what medication to take for blood pressure. I had every intention to come here and really just say, hey, you know what? There's a lot of things we can do. Yeah. And so, do I still toss tissue boxes to people? No, actually, I have stuffed animals now. I have Bert and Ernie. I have Animal. I have an exercise ball. And so I always try to give tools that we can utilize within the space in which we occupy. And I think that is the key thing when it comes to having the discussion about heart health and blood pressure and exercise and strength training. A lot of times I have a lot of seniors that come in and they have their knees hurt, their hips hurt, their feet hurt. I know what it's like to hurt. And you know what? I don't want to hurt, but I still want to maintain some level of activity. And yes, there are times where you just have to kind of, listen to your body, right? Like you and I are kind of on this opposite ranges of things where I love weight training, but I don't like to stretch. But I somehow really injured myself weight training, and a lot of it came from my lack of mobility. And so in your joints, right? And so the one thing I've come to appreciate as we continue to just evolve It's important to take care of those joints to maintain that range of motion, but it's also so important to maintain that strength and that muscle strength, because that's what burns those calories, and that's really what's good for your heart. And so it's so important to have that kind of routine that you can like fall back on. And so I have a medicine ball in the office, and so I try to give patients an idea as to, well, if you've got soup cans, if you've got books, if you've got, and it's just a matter of kind of having it part of your daily thing, right? Like whether you're going to brush your teeth and have your cup of coffee, and then maybe, I don't know, do some body squats. I know it sounds crazy, but it's one of those things that we have to take into account. And so incorporating that kind of physical activity is so important. And then the next step after that is, once you're able to do that, do you have the ability to actually get your heart rate up, right? Because that's the thing. And so a lot of times I talk to a lot of adults, and they tell me, well, you know, I do a lot of walking at work. And my response to that is, well, how's that working out for you? Have you really lost the weight that you're looking to do? And sometimes I do kind of poke at them a little bit, and I'll be like, well, you know, so they're like, well, you know, I walk at work. I'm very active at work. And I go, well, I'm sorry, are you on the Celtics? Do you play for the Pats? I mean, I know you may be 6'2", 300 pounds, and I know they're probably looking for a nose tackle, but I didn't figure that they were looking for a 44-year-old nose tackle. So can you really reflect as to how much walking you're actually doing at your job? And I do understand that some people do have a very active job, but a lot of Americans do a lot of sitting and typing, and they're kind of hunched over in the forward position, like we are right now.
Exactly.
And so there has to be an opportunity where we can kind of move our bodies. And I think falling in love with moving your body is the key take-home point today. If I could just drop anything with anybody listening right now, is that if you can just fall in love with moving again, that's going to do wonders for your blood pressure.
I love that. Falling in love with moving your body.
Yeah, right.
That's great. Well, I love to dance, and so I love moving my body. I do, you know, I love to listen to music. I love to dance in my bedroom in front of the mirror when nobody's looking. I'm not ashamed to say that on air, and it's great. It is great exercise.
I look for the opportunity. I usually have there's a lady or two that come to my office, and they're over the age of 90, and you know, I'm always willing to dance with them.
There you go.
If you're over 90 and you come see me in the office, I'm dancing with you, and I'm going to try my best to keep up.
I love it. And I think a couple of points that you made that I just want to, that I would just like to emphasize. One is that, you know, you talked about building it into your routine. And I think that is so important because, you know, I'm absolutely a routine person, but I think that, you know, knowing, like I said, I keep a calendar, right? You know, in my study, which is where I do all my stretching in the morning. You know, I have my mat that I bought for like $3 at a tag sale about 15 years ago. It's kind of like a yoga mat, but it folds up. It doesn't roll. It's perfect. You know, it's just exactly what I need. And on my calendar, all I just like every day I'll put it's just like I'll put EX, like, okay, so I did my exercises. The end of the month, I'm looking at it, and usually the only days that I haven't done it are Wednesday mornings because I'm already getting up at 4:15. But if I can see every other day filled in with that, and then if I go for a run or I go for a walk, I add that in as well. But you know, at least I'm going, hey, you know what? And I am super flexible, and I attribute that to the fact that, you know, half hour of that stuff is, you know, it's pretty good. It's pretty good routine.
It makes all the difference in the world, and I just have to continue to encourage that because it is so important for people to plan their activity time. Like,
yes.
my girls always ask me, or it's funny, they'll be like, well, what'd you do today? I was like, well, I had recess. And they're like, you had recess? As if, you know, and it's as if adults can't have recess anymore,
what's
right?
that about?
What happened where, you know, we were growing up, we were kids, we got to play outside, sometimes at least twice sometimes at school. You had gym and recess.
Yes,
what a day that was.
Exactly.
And then you go to school, you go to college, whatever, you get a job, and then they don't include recess anymore.
They don't include anything.
And I'm like, wait a minute.
Barely get a lunch sometimes.
Right. But I think that is a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like the one other thing I always want to continue to encourage is making that time within your day that is protected. And it's protected for your personal health, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a key thing. So I'm not going to plan any meetings on these days at this time because I'm either I'm going to have lunch, or no, I'm going to take care of my body, right? Like I don't need 2 hours for lunch. I don't need an hour and 30 minutes for lunch a lot of times. I need maybe like 10, 15 minutes, but there's got to be some time in there within your week where you can protect that time and nothing gets in the way of that. And I think that's an important thing. I also think one thing that we've also noticed when we're talking about workplace, if your workplace has a health program, or they're encouraging for you to get your blood pressure checked, or they're encouraging to do your cholesterol screenings, that's a good place to be in, right?
I agree.
And your job is doing right by you. And what we're starting to find, even based, if you look at measures when you're talking about equity and when you're talking about things in regards to cost, we're seeing improvements there, because if your employer has any interest in your blood pressure coming down or your cholesterol coming down, there's going to be a savings for everyone included when it comes to utilization in the healthcare market, and then what your employer has to pay. And so I think it's so important that as employers that we continue to be aware of how often our employees are sitting, what kind of opportunities they get to stand and walk, and how are we encouraging them to remain active even outside of what we have to do here. So I think those are some key things that we have to keep in mind.
Boy, I couldn't agree with you more. And I find that I'm very lucky because I work for the city, but I run the senior center. So essentially, I'm not at City Hall. I don't really know what they're doing over there, but I know what we're doing in our workplace. I was so happy last week. We had a beautiful day. I had to run over to City Hall for something. I came back, and I must have had 6 of my staff members who were just coming back from like a half-hour walk. I mean, they could actually go. Mary Lou and I my program director and I used to go on the bike trail all the time because it's not that far from the senior center. So we would just take a walk out there, walk back like 45 minutes or whatever. Because as you said, to actually sit and eat my lunch takes me about 10 minutes, if that. So, the rest of the time. And I really think that I feel like we have, as a working society, and this is just in general in America, everybody has a beeper and we got a cell phone and we're on call like 24/7 and we're expected. And, all of a sudden you find you've been sitting at your desk for 5 straight hours. And
That's not healthy.
It's not healthy. It's absolutely not. And we're lucky, too, because now we have a nurse full-time through the health department at the senior center. I've been encouraging my staff, go in there. We have a stand-on, we have a scale. She can take your blood. And so, they're starting to take advantage of, monitoring my weight, monitoring, I said, do it in the privacy of the nurse's office. It's just you two. But I just think we can be and we should be doing more in the workplace. And I've always kind of said, if somebody says to me, I just need to get out of here and take a walk, go. Get some even if, and even if the weather is freezing, bundle up. Even if you just go out for like 10 or 15 minutes, because I think that's the other thing. Like people will say, well, I don't have a 2-hour block. You don't necessarily need a 2-hour block.
Yeah.
Take what you can get,
Listen,
just do it.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you have, I've heard people say it, but I think it's so true. And they say, well, there's 24 hours in a day. You got 10 minutes for your body? Do you have 10 minutes? And when I think about it, I'm like, man, yeah, I kind of do. Like I'm pretty sure I could figure something out along the way if I just plan for it. And I think that's the key thing. And I think when we're starting to have conversations about how heart health is important and how it affects our communities, how it affects jobs, there's so many things that it plays a role in. And I think the one key thing that we sometimes take for granted is we're moving throughout the course of the day. And for a lot of us that are working, we're working so much that we sometimes forget about our heart. Like we forget about our body.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not perfect either, and when I was looking at what they've even considered to be hypertension, right? Like I think the numbers have even changed, right? The top number, it should be less than 120. The bottom number should be less than 80, right? And so if your blood pressures now are in the 130s, you've got a problem now, right? Like, not necessarily a problem, but
that's something to pay attention to.
You got to start paying attention.
Yeah.
So even Dr. Lovelace is like, hey, you know what? I should probably do a little bit more cardio. Maybe I should not eat those pieces of chocolate at night, even though they're delicious, right? Like I'm consciously making those thoughts as I continue to get older because it's going to affect me just as much. And I think the one thing that we're starting to really identify with heart health is that we probably should be paying attention to it even earlier in our life, right? Like in your 30s and in your 40s, we probably should be really addressing those healthy habits as we go along. And so what I always talk to, a lot of my demographic, I guess,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So if you're in your 30s, 40s, early 50s, right? What you're technically kind of almost in the prime of your working life, right? You're active, you've got kids, but you're very busy. And what I always like to continue to encourage is trying to find time for yourself within this process and involve as many people as you can within your circle to be active and healthy with you.
I agree with that.
Right. And I think when you're able to do that, that's a winning model.
Yep.
And then if your employer is down with it, then you are in the right place. And so I think those are some key concepts that we have to discuss or continue to kind of rethink. And then health when it comes to stress has been the other part to it. And when we're talking about jobs and what people do day in and day out, I have a lot of people that talk to me and say, hey, like my job is just super stressful. Does the can stress affect my blood pressure? And a lot of times I've been like, nah, not really, man. Like, you'll be all right. But no, I'm actually wrong on that. When you read what they're kind of publishing in the NIH or the National Institute of Health, or when you look at the websites for the American Heart Association, they're having conversations more about meditation or finding that time or finding those ways to really deal with stress. And so it's a real thing, and so, I kind of equate it to when, so I'm like, all right, so just imagine if we're in the office right now and there's a bear outside the door. That's pretty stressful. That's going to get my blood pressure up, right? And so, but you and I both know that the bear's not in front of the door, right? Right. But every day you go to work, is there a bear sitting at the desk right next to you?
Yeah.
Right. And if there is, man, that's not good for you.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe we need to reconsider what we're doing for our job, because if it's giving us that much stress where it's raising our blood pressure, that's not good for us down the road. And is this the right job that we need to be in? And so I even have those conversations. And I think it's important to have when we talk about the stresses that your workplace also creates for you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we have just thrown a whole bunch of stuff at people. So
we did.
Let's give them a little bit of.
Fell out. Yeah,
that's
sorry.
okay. Let's give them a little bit. No, I mean, I'm every topic that we're talking about, I'm like, okay, we can do a whole other segment on this, and we can do a whole other segment on that. I want to come back. We're going to take a short break. I do want to come back and pick up on blood pressure, because I think that's probably a key. So, of course, we've got all heart songs today. So this first one is "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" by Elton John and Kiki D. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM, radio for the Westfield masses, and WCPC cable channel 15. I will be back with Dr. Lovelace.
Don't go breaking my heart.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Hi, this is Harry Rock, host of Rock on Westfield every fourth Wednesday at 8 a.m. Tune in for my view of this place I call home.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 6:43. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses and WCPC Cable Channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host. My guest this morning, first hour, is Dr. Akinyele Lovelace, primary care physician with Family Medical Associates. Did I get that right? Yes, Family Medicine Associates. And the topic today is heart health.
Yeah.
February is Heart Health Awareness Month. So we've kind of gone through a rundown of what's involved with the heart in terms of, heart disease and blood pressure and so forth. We've talked a little bit about exercise. We touched on stress. We're going to get into all of these topics in more depth in the coming months. But I wanted to circle back to blood pressure because I work with an older population. You work with an older population. That is so common, and I honestly think that a lot of people just don't really even know what that means. If they come back to us and say, my doctor said I have high blood pressure, I need to do something about it, and, I'm not sure they even understand, A, what high blood pressure is, and B, why do I have to do something about it? Like, what are the consequences if I don't? Take it away, Dr. Lovelace.
So what is high blood pressure? So let's start with numbers, right? So typically when you go to a doctor's office or a dental office or whatever office it might be where they're evaluating, they're going to check your blood pressure. And what is your blood pressure? Well, it's how fast or how much blood gets pushed through your body, right? Mm-hmm. And so the top number is the pressure that the heart requires to push the blood throughout your body. Right? Now we call that systolic. Mm-hmm. The bottom number, diastolic, that is when actually the heart relaxes and it actually gets its own blood, right? Like it gets nutrients that it needs, right? And that number is important. The purpose or the reason why blood pressure is so important is because it is vital for us to get all of that nutritious oxygen that our body needs, right? So that blood, that fresh blood that we need, that gets oxygenated from the lungs, we need that to get to our tissues, to our brain, because we need that. We need it, right? We need oxygen, and that's how our body gets it.
All of the cells in our body.
All of the cells get it. All of the cells get it, and it's so important, right? And so the problem can arise is I always like to think of it like when you were at school and you drank out of the water fountain, it would kind of come and it would kind of trickle out. Maybe it would come, but there'd be that one time where maybe it would hit you in the face, right? And you'd be like, man, it got me all wet. And you're just annoyed about that. And so that's one way to think about it, right? So it's kind of just coming out of the water fountain, nice and easy. Or you go and maybe you remember drinking out of the water hose. I remember, being on a sports team in August when it's getting hot. It's about to be 60 degrees this weekend. And maybe I want to drink out of the water hose. I don't put it on blast, right? But I drink from it. But then I think about a fire hose. Would I drink from a fire hose? No, I'm not going to drink from a fire hose. That seems a bit harsh, right? And it feels like it would hurt, right? Or would I drink from a power washer? No, but you have to imagine the speed, right? Or the pressure. That when you think of it that way, you're like, wow. So if I was to put my mouth on water that's coming out of a fire hose, that probably would tear up the skin, wouldn't it? Yeah, it probably would. Well, imagine that type of irritation actually occurring within your blood vessels. And why is that important? Because that consistent speed and breaking down within those vessels causes those vessels to swell, right? And ultimately what can happen is those vessels can swell because they're trying to like slow down the pressure. They're like, all right, guys, this is enough. Like, can it not come in so hard? Like it hurts. And so it tries to protect itself. And so it starts a squeezing process, right? And that squeezing process can occur in a couple different places. It can occur in your kidneys. It can occur maybe around your heart or maybe even in your brain, right? And those three organs are the really primary drivers of blood pressure.
Okay.
And so what can happen is for example, if the pressure is too hard on the kidneys, right? The kidney is a filter. Same as if you were to have your cup of coffee and you use the filter, you like for it to drip through. You don't want it to just run through, right? But if you were to kind of push it through the filter, you could tear the filter.
Right.
And so that's what happens to the kidneys. The kidneys get torn, and then next thing you know, they're not filtering as good as they once were. And they're trying to prevent the pressure also. And so you run into this, it almost sounds like a double-edged sword where now the kidneys were trying to protect themselves, but now they're all ripped apart. And now you've got blood pressure issues associated with your kidneys. And so that's why high blood pressure and kidney disease is something that we really pay close attention to. And so if it's not really looked at, you run into problems. And so that's why we have a lot of Americans who've had long-standing hypertension who now have significant kidney disease, and some are even on dialysis.
I thank you for that. I have to tell you, in my many years and all my experience, I always relate high blood pressure to, heart attack, stroke, that kind of thing. Never kidney.
Yeah, we
did not know that.
We tend to overlook that. And then of course when we get to the heart portion of this is that the heart itself is a muscle.
Yeah.
Right? The heart it's just an amazing muscle. It just keeps going. But it's, if you could imagine, your Sylvester Stallone still looks great these days. He works out and his muscles look amazing, right? But it takes a lot of work and effort to maintain your muscles at that level at his age.
Yeah.
And so blood pressure itself creates that kind of extra weight on the heart. And if your heart is not prepared to carry that extra lift all the time, it will over time get weak. It'll initially get big and puffy, which is great. Right? You'll see those great muscles, but over time, it's going to fatigue out and start to thin out. And then that's when the heart itself starts to kind of wither away. And then some people develop heart failure, right? Hypertensive heart disease associated with heart failure. And so that becomes an issue. The other part to this is blood pressure. If it's too high, ultimately, when you have those very small vessels, right? When we're talking very minute, very tiny vessels, they can only take but so much pressure.
Yeah.
And so if the pressure becomes too immense for these very small vessels, they'll start to pop.
Yep.
And then subsequently, you could have these small pops of these vessels in the brain, and we start to call those infarcts, right? Or we'll call the term is called a lacunar infarct, right? And that's important because you'll have adults who have been to the hospital. Maybe they had symptoms that they thought were a stroke or a transient ischemic attack, or what we call a TIA. And they'll be like, wow, I had some weakness on one side of my body, but then it went away. But they got nervous and they went to the emergency room and got their head scanned. And they're told that they might have had strokes in the past. And they're like, well, I never had any symptoms. Well, did you have high blood pressure? Yeah, I've had high blood pressure. Well, there you go, right? And so it's one of those silent things that sometimes occur that we're not even really aware of because there's usually not anything that is visibly seen. And so that is the issue. And so why is blood pressure so important? It's so important because it affects us in so many different ways and is going to add to worsening our quality of life and add to the cost of healthcare in general for us as a society, when this is something we could have all just avoided if we just did a little bit better when it came to not having that piece of chocolate at night and maybe getting out for that walk later on today.
So, Dr. Lovelace, with blood pressure, in order to, because of course my first thought is, okay, if I go to the doctor and the doc says, blood pressure is a little high, we need to get it down. What am I doing to get it down? Is it what I'm doing for my heart in general with exercise and, a nutritious diet, or how am I doing that?
So first thing we're going to do, we're going to make sure we actually have high blood pressure.
Okay.
So the one cool thing that's coming out now that we're starting to see some real value, and I enjoy it and encourage it, is home blood pressure monitoring, or what we call remote patient monitoring. And we did that in our office for about a year. And we saw drops in blood pressure. What we also found were that there were some patients who were diagnosed with high blood pressure who didn't really have it.
Yeah.
You just were coming to the doctor's office.
The white coat syndrome.
I mean, hey, you know, it's a thing. But you know what?
It is a thing.
But it's a thing. But it's a stressful thing, right? Like you're coming into an environment that is unfamiliar to you.
Yeah.
You know, I typically don't wear a white coat all the time, but I do. You know, and sometimes I wear a blue blazer. So either way, the blood pressure is up, and a lot of times it's because you're in a sterile environment.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel cozy. Sometimes it smells. Like, you know, doctors' offices just have a way about themselves. And
they do.
If I had my way with it, I'd probably want it to be more like a spa and less like, I don't know, like a, I don't even know what to call it these days. Like just an institution.
Yeah, institution. Right.
We need to come up with Dr. Coughlin. He's got that med spa thing going on.
Exactly. We so need that, right? But we don't do enough of that, and we don't encourage that. And so a lot of times you're like, oh man, I've had this doctor's appointment. You know, it took me 10 minutes to get here. It was a lot of traffic. I'm on my second cup of coffee. I've got to get back to work. I'm going to get all those things are going on, and your blood pressure might be slightly up. But that's okay. What should happen first is, number one, they should probably recheck your blood pressure by the end of the visit.
I agree.
And the next thing you know, your blood pressure is going to come down. You'll be like, oh my God, how come when the medical assistant took it, it was so high, but then when you take it, it's come down? Well, you know what? We've had a minute. We sat down. We talked.
Yeah.
You had the issues that you wanted to address, maybe not, but maybe you got it off your chest. You're a little bit more relieved. Maybe you used the bathroom before you came in. You know, like there's a lot of other variables here.
Yep.
Maybe even just how the provider took your blood pressure. Your feet were flat to the ground. You were sitting in the chair. Your arm was at the level of your heart when they took the blood pressure. Like all those little things matter.
Yeah.
And then if there's any concern about what to do, I want you to go home and check your blood pressure. Like I want to know what your blood pressure is when you're in your most comfortable environment, like at home. Like
familiar.
So you had, you know, you're at home. Maybe you went to the bathroom,
Sitting there petting the dog,
sitting there relaxing. You know, you're cozy.
Yeah.
I want you cozy. Then check your blood pressure.
Yeah.
If your blood pressure, if that top number is above 140, and this is what I tell my seniors, if your blood pressure is above 140 while you're at home cozy, then we probably need to talk.
Yeah, we got an issue.
Now we need to do something, right? And then what are we going to do about it? Well, first things first, I'm not going to just automatically start you on medications. That doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? I'm in the business of medicine, but I'm in the better business of health and wanting you to be better. And so the next thing would be, well, what are we doing nutrition-wise? Like, what are you eating, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the key thing that we're starting to notice is that Americans consume, like 3,400 milligrams of sodium a day, when the average requirement should be less than 2,000. And so you're like, wait a minute, that's a lot of salt.
Yeah.
Well, where is it coming from? Well, it's coming from a lot of these packaged foods that we got, right? So if we're not paying attention to our packaged food intake, if we're eating out a lot, you know, they're going to stick sodium in places that you wouldn't even imagine.
Right.
And so the next thing you know, you're like, man, you know, but I think I eat good. Like, I hear it a lot. The people go, I don't put salt on food.
Right.
I never use the
You
salt
don't need
shaker.
to.
And
It's
I'm like,
already,
But for me, it's like, you know, I'd rather you use this salt shaker because at least the majority of people that use the salt shaker kind of know what they're doing, right? Oh, this needs salt. Oh, okay, great, fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm worried about, right? We typically won't put a gram of salt on our French fries.
Right.
But those French fries could have had a gram of salt already built in the process, right? I think that's the key thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe you had a packaged sandwich. Maybe you had a TV dinner. Remember TV dinners?
Yes,
right?
the TV dinners. Oh my God, we thought those were the greatest things.
I
Came
thought
out in the 50s.
I thought those were amazing
It was
too,
like
right?
a big treat.
Would have thought a TV dinner. You put it in this thing that looked like an oven, and instantly within 10 to 15 minutes, you have to pull the plastic maybe, and then you had a TV tray and you sat in front of the TV and ate, right? And so I still have a lot of seniors that rely on a TV dinner.
Yep.
And so I just encourage them and I say to them, just look at the sodium content, right? And so the key things I like to empower my patients to do, or anybody in general, hey, number one, check your blood pressure at home. Number two, food scale. Have you ever considered a food scale? Because the food scale is important, because the food scale is going to challenge you to kind of get a better idea of what that serving size should look like. And then what it should also start to do is maybe encourage you to look at the label. Because then you're able to be like, well, doc, I don't know what a 2 grams sodium diet is? What do you mean under 2 grams? What is 2 grams? I'm like, exactly. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
It's just some, I never, but it's something that I've got to figure out. And so what do? All right, listen, it says I can only really eat a quarter of this. All right, well, let me do that and just let me see how I feel, right? And then kind of go from there. And then as I go along and taking an inventory of what I'm eating, I can kind of get an idea as to whether or not I'm getting more sodium than I actually need. And if I am, well, I just need to probably just cut back a bit. And that's where you start. And then after that, it's like, all right, well, I've gotten my sodium level down. All right, can I start doing a little bit more walking? Can I do a little bit more cardio? Is that something that I have the availability to do? And if so, then let me try that and see how that works out for me. And those are kind of the steps that I encourage when someone comes in that we suspect may have high blood pressure or hypertension.
Okay, and I think I have preached this all along, and I continue to do so. I think it's really important to surround yourself with a support group that does, that kind of can be your cheerleaders. I'm seeing it happen at work right now. We have some new staff members, and man, they're in there. People are sharing recipes. They're bringing, samples of, I made this soup. This is really healthy. It is so encouraging. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it. And I think, I feel like, if you're married, I think it's really important that your partner, your spouse, is on board. If you're living with somebody, or your best friend, your sibling, whatever it is, I think it's really important to try to get people on board, whether it's stopping smoking, cutting down on alcohol, changing your eating habits, exercising. Because if you're with somebody who's like, it's not that big a deal. It's really hard to be your own cheerleader. It's hard enough to do this, but to do it with other people kind of poo-pooing it is very, very challenging. So surround yourself with people that are going to encourage you.
And don't beat yourself up.
Yeah.
The one thing that I love my wife for saying this, and it's so true when she says it. She goes, I may not be, no, what did she say? She says, somebody wants your body. Right, like somebody wants your body, right? Yeah. And I thought that's such a key thing, right? Yeah. Like, I may not be perfect, but I know that somebody wants this body. And what does that really mean? Well, you have to love your body, love yourself, right? And I think that's so encouraging, right? When you think of your body in such high regard, that it is something of value. Yeah. And I think when you're able to kind of do that, then you're not willing to accept putting trash in your body. And if you're not willing to accept putting trash in your body, then great. Then you're going to try to give it the best it can take. It's like, wait a minute, am I going to just go? Am I going to put leaded fuel in my car? No, I'm not going to put leaded fuel in my car. I want to put premium if possible, right. So I want to put the best to maximize what I can get out of this body, because this is all we've got in this lifetime apparently. So let's maximize that. And so what I always want to encourage people to just kind of remember is that this is really about self-love. And the one thing we have to continue to try to do is continue to love our bodies just a little bit more, and that will kind of get us through those times we might have those setbacks. Where we're like, Super Bowl, I ate too many wings. All right, well, it's fine, it's okay. It was just one day. But what are we doing day in and day out in that regard? And I think that's the other part to it when it comes to having a team. Yeah. It's also about that self-love. And
I think that goes back to, again, we're sort of circling back as we wrap this up, but when we talked about routines. And I think that's really important. And I know Jen's waiting in the wings, and she's talked about this before as well. It's like, okay, we had the Super Bowl. You might have, had some stuff you shouldn't have. You were sitting around on a couch for 4 hours watching the whole thing, but you need to get out of the mindset of, everything got thrown out the window, so I might as well just go back to the way I used to be, 6 months ago. No. It's like one day,
Just one day.
Okay, let's get back on track here, and it's okay. Fine. So I think, again, if that's part of your routine, I've had times where, if I've been sick and I haven't done my stretches in a week, and then it gets really easy to kind of say, but it's like the sooner I can get back into it, and then, get the routine going, have my little little visual calendar. Okay, yep, no, I'm back on track here, And so I think for everything, whether it's what you're eating, whether it's, how you're moving your body and the whole thing is to, focus on those routines.
Being intentional.
Yeah, being intentional.
I think is so key.
And what was I want to close with that movement. What was the movement thing again?
Falling in love with movement. Falling
in love with moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I do
in
too.
love with moving.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Akinyele Lovelace, thank you so much for being with us. And as I said, this has opened the door for lots of things that we can.
Yeah, it did.
We're gonna circle back in future ones to that stress thing.
That's
a big one.
big.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's really big.
So we'll circle back to that.
Awesome.
We will see you next month.
Can't wait.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout
Join
Westfield.
us every Thursday morning
from 6 until at least 7:30.
Check out the Bobby G and Company Show
right here on WSKB 89.5
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:05. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield Masses and WCPC Cable Channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and we are just like switching it right in there. Akinyele just walked out the door. Dr. Lovelace just left. Jen Giffune just came in the door, and kind of they talked the sodium talk on the way in. And did you cover this? Did you cover that? So welcome, Jen Giffune. Jen does our Food for Thought segment. We've renamed that because we've switched over to the Diabetes Dialogue being an in-person support group.
I feel like this is too high.
Sorry. I was going to say, you can bend the mic down there.
He's smaller than I am.
I know. Well, listen, I was having issues with mine because it was flipped upside down. And the first 10 minutes I was here, I said to Pete, it kept, like sliding down. And I was like, I'm like, what is wrong? Pete goes, it should be over the top. But I think the students were in here using the studio yesterday afternoon. So Pete and I were trying to quickly clean everything up and put it back.
Right.
So Jen, February is Heart Health Awareness Month. Obviously, this was a topic that Dr. Lovelace wanted to really dive into. And I thought, so perfect because I've got both of you on the same day. And
Right.
so there's so much to talk about. And as he and I found, we have so many jumping off points now, of things that, that because let's face it, we know that that heart disease and heart-related issues are the number one killer in America. It's been that way for a long time.
Right.
But, to me, what's encouraging, and I knew this, but I had to be reminded, is there is so much with heart health that we have control over. There are so many diagnoses. You get the diagnosis, and it's like, can't do anything about it.
Right.
Right. Other than treatment. We can prevent some of this stuff and really increase our quality of life. So you're going to talk about that from a nutritional aspect. Dr. Lovelace was talking about it from, sort of that multifaceted. And again, we'll get back into some of those exercise and just, stress awareness and so forth.
Right.
So,
well, I have to say, I have people who come to me because, excuse me, they've been at the doctor's. The doctor has said high blood pressure or high cholesterol or both.
Yeah.
And they don't want to take the medication.
Yes.
So the doctors tend to, and I don't know what Dr. Lovelace does, but say this to patients if they're not at immediate risk of,
yes,
heart attack,
right.
I'll give you 3 months. And then you come back and we'll check things and see where you're at. But you're going to have to change the way you're living. You're going to have to start to exercise consistently. You're going to have to change your eating style so that it's not a diet, but this is how you're going to eat for the rest of your life, which is what I promote anyway.
Yes.
And you're going to have to manage all kinds of things like, deal with your stress or, sleep better, whatever.
Yeah.
And so they walk in the door very motivated to see me. And then we get into the nitty-gritty, and it becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes there are some very, very deep-held behaviors that are going to need to change.
Yes.
And you've got a deadline because usually they'll only give you those 3 months. I know that we as our own advocates can go back and say, well, I'm not taking the medication, but then you're putting yourself at risk for a heart attack or stroke. And the doctors are very hesitant to let you extend it beyond the 3 months. It helps to be able to monitor at home, and I heard Dr. Lovelace really encouraging that, and I do too.
Yes.
I mean, why wouldn't you want to track things at home when you're in your most relaxed state and just see how things are going day to day? I mean, we're not going to go home and check our cholesterol every day, but if you can check something, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The nurse at the senior center, and I think one of my past nurses started this when she was, doing blood pressures for some of our seniors are religious about coming in once a week to have their blood pressure checked and, kind of at the same day, same time sort of thing. But one of the former nurses, and I think Evelyn has kept up with it, is, kind of has a card for them. Right. So that when they go to the doctor's office and the feedback from the doctors has been really positive, saying this is great because now I can, it's tracked by, we know that a professional did it. It was, these are accurate blood pressures, and, they're at the senior center. I mean, they're pretty, it's not home, but, they're pretty relaxed at the senior center. They're there to socialize or take a class or whatever.
But, you hit on an important point, and with me, this is really vital. You have to write down these numbers.
Oh, yeah.
You think you're going to remember.
No, you're not going to remember.
You're not going to remember, and what you think it typically is right now may not be what it typically was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Or 3 weeks ago. So, when I have people who track things, I strongly recommend that they write it down.
Yeah.
It's okay to put things in a phone, but the problem is you need to see it
right.
As a
almost like a spreadsheet or a calendar. And some people, what? I encourage my seniors, if they're not computer savvy to do spreadsheets or anything like that, just take a calendar. We have all these freebie calendars.
Right.
Take one. This is your blood pressure calendar.
Yeah.
Or this is your, diabetes, insulin, whatever calendar.
It could just be a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has the date, time, and what the result was.
Right.
And, I always encourage people, if there's an anomaly, You know, normally my blood pressure at home is 120/70 or 130/80, whatever it is. This one day it was like 170/92.
Yeah.
Well, write down what was going on.
Yeah, what
that
else
day.
was happening?
You know, if somebody dinged my car in the parking lot at the Big Y and didn't leave a note, and then I got a bill that said I hadn't paid something. You know, like, what was happening that day? Because that may have played a role. And it's, you know, that way you have something to, when you show the doctor and they see that anomaly and they ask you, so what was going on that day?
Well, you have a
don't
frame.
have to
You know what?
remember.
You have a frame of reference,
Right,
And I think
right.
that's really important. And I'll do that. Even like I keep a calendar. I was talking earlier with Dr. Lovelace. You know, sort of an exercise one. It's not a big deal one, but it's, you know, I'll just put like if I stretched in the morning, and then if I went for a run or a walk. If I walked with someone, I'll write that down because I know if I'm walking with Gary versus if I'm walking with, you know, one of my seniors, it might, you know, that might have been a little bit more of a stroll,
Right.
And this was more of a, you know, high intensity,
Power
almost
walk.
a jog.
Right.
So, you know, that just kind of helps me with, you know, if sometimes I don't always chart the distance, but I'll chart the time. So it's like, you know, half hour, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, you know, because that's pretty easy, you know.
I tend to encourage time versus mileage with people, unless they're training for something.
Right. And I will do that. I will do mileage exactly for that reason. Like when I wanted to run a 10K, it was a big deal for me. So I needed to track my mileage because it was kind of like, okay, am I getting close to where I'm going to be able to do this? I was less concerned about the time and more concerned about, okay, so I did run 5.5 or, now I made it up to 6 or, you know,
Once
whatever
you make it to the distance, then you can work on your time.
Right,
but,
exactly.
When it comes to blood pressure, you know, we're usually, and I'm not going to say always, but usually, at least my population, isn't training for races.
Right.
They're training to bring their numbers down and strengthen the
They're
heart.
training to avoid medication.
Right. And, you know, I have to say most of the time people wind up on a medication and it's not because they're doing all the wrong things. Sometimes the body's just going, well, you know what? This is how it is. This is how hard I'm going to work or what I'm going to do. But it doesn't mean that you stop the
other
exercise,
behaviors,
the eating right. That's all part of the treatment regimen.
Well, and you know what, too, Jen? I mean, let's face it, medications are not all created equal. I mean, if you can be on a minimal dosage as opposed to a maximum dosage of blood pressure medication, why, you know, okay, I got to do this, but hey, I'm way down here. Side effects are going to be less. You're not going to have to worry about it as much. So, you know, it definitely still worth the effort of all of those other lifestyle changes.
The other thing is, you know, you go on one medication over time. Do you want them to add a second, a third?
Correct. And how often have we heard that? Oh, I'm on 2 different blood pressure medications.
Right.
Or 3 different blood pressure
anyway,
medications. Yeah.
sorry about my voice.
It's all right. We're going to take a break in a minute.
You can back things up.
Yeah.
It's a good approach.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I consider eating, exercise, stress relief all part of a treatment program versus just one treatment of medication.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's take a short break so we can all get our little water here and so forth. So let me see, what do I have for the 7:10? Oh, okay. This is like one of my favorite songs. Of course, I told Dr. Lovelace all the songs today are related to the heart because we had to do it.
Good.
This one is Rod Stewart singing "Rhythm of My Heart" because I love this song.
that
Yeah, it's great. It's a great song. It's a good wake-up song. You can do a little stretches and exercises to it. It is 7:15. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses and WCPC cable channel 15. Jen Giffune is my guest, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
of a helicopter blade. Flames are getting higher in efforts, burning down the bridges of my memory. Love may still be alive somewhere, somewhere, where they're down and only dear 100 steel towns away. Oh, the rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I can sail. Photographs, kerosene, light up my darkness, light it up, light it up, light it up. I can still feel a touch of your thin blue jeans running down the alley. I got my eyes all over you, baby. Oh, baby. Oh, the rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I can sail. I can sail. I got lightning in my veins, slipping like the handle of a slot machine. Love may still exist in another place. I'm just yanking back the handle, no expression on my face. The rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. Oh, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. The rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, with the words I love you rolling off my tongue. No, never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing. The rhythm of my heart is beating like a drum, the words I love you rolling off my tongue. Never will I roam, for I know my place is home, where the ocean meets the sky. I'll be sailing.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Join us every Thursday morning
From 6 until at least 7:30,
Check out the Bobby G and Company Show.
right here on WSKB 89.5.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:20. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses and WCPC Cable Channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and I'm in the studio this morning with our resident registered dietitian and licensed nutritionist, Jen Giffune. Welcome again, Jen.
Thank you.
So we are talking about heart health. That is the topic of the show, and you are approaching this obviously from a nutritional standpoint. So where would you like to transition at this point, Jen? What would you like to talk about?
Well, I know you guys talked about sodium levels and where you're finding them in foods and to cut them down. So I can jump in off of that, but actually when I was thinking about it getting ready for the show, my first thought came to cholesterol.
Okay, well,
because
go for it.
I see that all the time. People come to my office, they've been diagnosed with high cholesterol, and they're in a panic because everybody equates that with having a heart attack or a stroke. And for obvious reasons. So, one of the biggest misconceptions that I find out there is people come in and say, I've stopped eating cholesterol. I read all the labels and I'm only buying things that have, zero.
No cholesterol. Yeah.
And I have to explain to them that in the body, your blood cholesterol will go up and down based on how much fat you eat and what type.
Okay.
So it really isn't based on how much cholesterol you eat, because I'll have someone walk in the door and go, I'm eating low-fat peanut butter because first of all, it has no cholesterol, but then I got rid of the fat. And I explained to them that, it's the type of fat and how much you eat that lowers or raises. The fat in peanut butter is the type of fat that would help lower your cholesterol. So pouring off all that fat and getting rid of it takes away all the heart health benefits.
Okay.
So, it's a learning curve.
It is a learning curve. I find, Dr. Lovelace, I think, was pretty honest and open, even from a physician's point of view. There's a lot to learn here, and we don't know. And I find the whole nutrition thing to be incredibly confusing. I have to be, and on the one hand, I think labels are great.
Right.
On the other hand, they can also be confusing. And I think if you're looking at, when you get to the back of it and you're looking at the nitty gritty, the weeds of the whole thing of, how much of, how vitamin this or whatever, that's one thing. But it's the marketing stuff, zero cholesterol or, whatever. That's confusing because, as you say, people think, well, I'm doing the right thing. I bought this because it said that, and now you're doing the wrong thing, so.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So everyone, there's so much out there. Every day there's a different news report about a new nutrition thing, and it often contradicts what we've heard last time.
Yeah.
And, my explanation is this. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we research it and we study it, and as they find out the information, they report it. And you have to be selective about what information is going to apply to you. So, for example, you may find that, so here's my favorite example. When I was a student, there was no mention ever, because we didn't know, about omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are the type of heart-healthy fat that we find in, say, salmon.
Okay.
And, of course, we all know now that that's why you eat fish, because it's heart-healthy fat and it's going to help lower your cholesterol. Most people are pretty familiar that salmon and olive oil are good things to eat. But when I was a student, we didn't know that existed.
Okay.
It wasn't until they researched it and figured out why people who ate these very fatty fish had really good heart health.
Did fine.
So it was something that we didn't know about, and now we do.
Yep.
Now, the problem is we've done more research, because if that is something we know, what else can we learn about these fatty fish? And now we've discovered that there can be mercury in fish, and high amounts of mercury can affect you if you have a higher risk of central nervous system disorders. So, do we eat these high-fat fish and risk the mercury to get the heart health benefit, or do we choose the lower-fat fish, get less heart-healthy stuff to limit the mercury? You have to make a decision. So, for me, if I were at significant risk of heart attack or stroke, and I see people all the time, you go back in their family line, and every male going back 4 generations died of a heart attack and high cholesterol. I'm going to focus on getting in my fatty fish regularly, like 3 times a week or more. I'm not going to worry about the mercury because you know what? Nobody's had Parkinson's or something like that. So, the information is contradictory until you decide what's important to me as an individual. Now, maybe both issues are important, and then you find ways to get heart-healthy fat that maybe are from other food sources. So maybe you're going to be using olive oil or eating a plant-based lifestyle. So there are ways around the news that comes out. We also have to question the information that's coming out in the marketing and the newspapers and the magazines because, the marketers are trying to get you to buy the product.
Of course.
And they can't lie, but they can twist things to make them sound better. So you can't get cholesterol in a food that's plant-based.
Okay.
But you can advertise that peanut butter is cholesterol-free, making it sound better. But it's always cholesterol-free because it's plant-based.
Okay.
Okay, so you have to think about where the advertising is.
Well, right. What's the source of your information? I used to go back to that when I was teaching at Springfield College, and my students would say, "Well, I read this on the internet; it must be a fact." I'm like, "Okay, well, this was 25 years ago, and we now know it's like, okay, just because it's on the internet, but you always look to, well, what is the source? Is it like, is it like the, one of the government.org sources, or Mayo Clinic or something like that, or is it Joe Schmo? I'm trying to sell whatever I'm trying to sell." This product. And it's exactly, is this a scientifically based or is this marketing and advertising?
Right. And then the reports that come out on the radio or in the newspapers.
Mainstream media.
So, suddenly something's good or bad for you. And my first thought is, who did they study? When, and what was studied. And, if it's a study based on 5 people over 3 days, I am less inclined to believe it.
Correct.
But if,
is it a longitudinal study? We've been tracking, 2,000 people over the last 5 years, and this is what we found. My brother is a chemist. He worked for Procter & Gamble for years. So, Mike, everything has to be a double blind, what's your data, the whole thing. But he's really right to question that because you're absolutely right. And I used to have students that would hand me, research papers, and it was the same thing. They'd be quoting some study, and it's just what you said. You said, Jen, it was like a study of 6 people over, 1 month, over whatever it is. And, all the same age or no cultural diversity, like, oh my God, this is so, skewed.
Absolutely. I like studies that they look at thousands of people
over a
years,
period of time.
And it's not just men.
Right.
So for a long time, the only people studied were men.
Yes.
And I'm like, women are more than half the population. We should be in studies too. And there should be studies about that include Asian American, Asian, African,
absolutely,
Indian, natives, indigenous, like everybody should be included because we need to know how the nutrition that they're looking at affects all people.
Well, and I think in your line of work, Jen, and certainly, we can see this right here in Westfield. When you are culturally diverse, we have a lot of people, for instance, here that are Eastern European, Polish, and I'm Hungarian, Russian. Ukrainian, and so forth. We come with our own, sort of ethnic dishes.
Right.
And what does that have to do with nutrition? The salt content or the fat content or whatever, But that's important because if I'm, especially for older adults, I'm used to eating these kinds of meals, and now suddenly, I can't do that?
Well, there is if you think about an ethnic group, and the foods that have been passed down generation after generation, let's just focus on Eastern European. They needed to preserve food to last through the winter. So I do see a lot of people who are Eastern European, and there's a lot of salt because they're pickling things to make them last through the winter. There's a lot of high fat. There's a lot of
absolutely
things that are going to take them through till the next growing season. The problem is we're not those people. I know that ethnically we are those people, but we're not out there. We can buy food every day of the week
yes,
that doesn't need to be preserved for the next 6 months. And it's heartbreaking for some people when I say you're eating about 8,000 milligrams of sodium a day, and we need to cut that to 2,000 milligrams a day.
That's a lot of cutting.
That's a lot of cutting.
It is.
But if you want to help treat your high blood pressure, we're going to have to make some changes. And, I try my hardest to keep food intake as similar as possible for people. But sometimes there's just got to be this has to be a special treat.
Yeah. Well, and I think Dr. Lovelace was pointing out, especially on the sodium scale, as he was saying, he said, I hear my patients tell me all the time, but doc, I almost never grab the salt shaker. I almost never put it in. Well, that's what it's, of course not. Right. I mean, you're eating, look at the sodium content, even just like a can of soup. I mean, unless it's a low salt soup, unless it actually says that. But even that, if it says low salt, flip it on the back and say, well, how many?
It says lower.
Yeah.
It doesn't, unless it says no salt added, lower means it's less than it was. Which doesn't mean that it's low.
That it's low, right.
And the other thing about soup is you've got that, can, the 10-ounce can, that's usually 2 servings. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, Tina, everybody eats the whole can.
Yeah, they'll eat the whole can of soup. Right. Who's going to, right.
And you take something like a Campbell's red and white label soup, you'll pass your 2,000 milligrams in that one can of soup.
Right.
That doesn't count anything else you eat all day.
So let me ask you something, Jen. We touched on the topic of labels, and I agree with you. I think this is very confusing. So if I look at a soup can and it says 2 servings per can, or anything, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. So when they do all the content, the vitamins, the sodium, the fat, and all that, that's based on per serving, right?
So you always have to, if you're going to read a food label, you always have to figure out or look at servings per.
Okay.
So if your can of soup has 2 servings and
you're going to eat the whole can, you're doubling everything.
You have to double everything.
And it's the same thing, even, because I read this one time, like on a bag of pretzels or something. Yeah. So it was like, it was per serving. They had all this stuff. And then they would have like 14 pretzels per serving so that they could tell you. So I counted that out one time. I'm like, okay, well, if I took a bowl of pretzels to have, as a snack while I watch TV, like how many pretzels am I actually eating? So, you count out 14 and it's nothing. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm at least doubling this. So I think that can be confusing, but interesting for people to...
Disheartening,
yes. That's a better word.
Yeah, because it's not confusing. Yeah, right. If they say one serving is 14, you count out 14. You look at that measly little 14 in your hand and you go,
really?
Really?
Yeah.
So, what are you going to do? Well, you can eat your 14 pretzels, or you can complement your 14 pretzels with some pepper strips and some celery sticks and some carrots so that you've got volume.
Yeah.
Because we are a society that likes to feel full.
We do.
Or you can buy the lower sodium version. Or, I happen to really like Snyder's unsalted pretzels.
Really?
Yeah, they're great.
Okay.
I don't know. They have that pretzel taste without the salt.
All right.
But, when it comes to lowering your sodium, you have to understand that if you've been eating a high sodium diet your whole life, and most people have because that's the country we live in, it will take 3 months to desensitize your taste buds on your tongue to a lower sodium intake. So the first 3 months, things taste bland and blah and icky. But if you can get through 3 months, then things will have more flavor.
And I'm guessing, too, if you can get through that 3 months, then the salty stuff is going to taste really salty.
It is.
Because, how often have I heard that, too? It's like, wow, I don't want to, it's too salty.
Right. It's a negative reinforcement that is unfortunate because I know we're supposed to always dangle a carrot and be positive, but sometimes negative reinforcement works.
Yeah, sometimes that's the way to go. All right, let's take a little break. It is 7:35. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield Masses. And WCPC Cable Channel 15. If you're just joining us this morning, my guest this hour is Jen Giffune. Jen is a registered dietitian and licensed nutritionist. The topic is heart health. February is Heart Health Awareness Month, so we are talking about some dietary, nutritionally, sort of lifestyle changes. So in keeping with the heart rhythm, this song has been when I chose this song when I was working on my outline, I think over the weekend, and it's been in my head. It's "Achy Breaky Heart" by Billy Ray Cyrus, and I've been singing the song in my head for 3 days. So let's just play it.
You can tell the world you never was my girl. You can burn my clothes when I'm gone. Oh, you can tell your friends just what a fool I've been and laugh and joke about me on the phone. You can tell my arms go back into the phone. You can tell my feet to hit the floor. Or you can tell my lips to tell my fingertips they won't be reaching out for you no more. Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, I just don't think he'd understand. And if you tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, he might blow up and kill this man. You can tell your mom I moved to Arkansas. You can tell your dog to bite my leg. Or tell your brother Cliff his fist can tell my lip he never really liked me anyway. Or tell your Aunt Louise, tell anything you please. Myself already knows I'm not okay. Or you can tell my eyes to watch out for my mind. It might be walking out on me today. Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, I just don't think he'd understand. And if you tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, he might blow up and kill this man. Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, I just don't think he'd understand. And if you tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, he might blow up and kill his man. Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, I just don't think he'd understand. And if you tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, he mightn't blow up and kill this man.
Underwriting support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business for the Greater Westfield communities. Informing, educating, advocating, the Chamber provides opportunities for members to make meaningful connections on local, regional, and state levels. For more information on the Chamber's many events, workshops, and programs, as well as the benefits of membership, visit westfieldbiz.org. The Chamber focuses on the most important economy, yours.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:40. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses and WCPC Cable Channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and Jen Giffune is in the studio with me. Jen is a registered dietitian, licensed nutritionist, and we are talking about heart health and sort of a heart healthy, nutritional lifestyle, some of the changes that people might consider making. So we've talked a bit about sodium because Dr. Lovelace had mentioned that as well. Jen, he talked about a food scale. What do you think about that?
Well, I have a food scale. I love to weigh and measure things, and that keeps me on the straight and narrow for the amount of fat and other foods in our diet. People hate to weigh and measure things, but I have to say, our eyeballs are not good at measurements, hungrier we are, the bigger a half a cup or a cup looks.
I have to tell you this story because this is so relevant. This just happened last night. So Gary, Grace, and I are on the couch watching Jeopardy, right? So Gary stops it. We're doing a replay thing. So he stops it and he goes in to get, a snack, like his dessert. Now he's on this dairy-free, gluten-free thing. So he has some kind of whatever it is. It looks like ice cream, but it's not really because it's not dairy. It's dairy-free, which is fine. He likes his peanut. He loves his peanut butter. So he's got this chocolatey-looking stuff, whatever that is, with, peanut butter on top. So he sits down, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was kind of in the middle of the couch facing the TV. Grace is facing this way. Gary's kind of this way. So she looks at it, she goes, Dad, she goes, are you sure you got enough in that bowl? So I turn around and I look, and he's got this small bowl, and he has, it's just flowing, full, right? Yeah. So he says to Grace, and this goes right directly to this measurement thing. He goes, well, my rationale is, he said, I want to keep it in a small bowl because if I put it in a bigger bowl, I'm going to fill the bowl and I'm going to be eating more than what I really want to eat. Well, of course, Grace and I, we both at the same time, we burst out laughing because we're looking at him going, but this little bowl is like completely overflowing. Right. So I said to Gary, I'm not really sure you accomplished your goal here, my friend. I said, you might want to measure that out and see exactly how much you have, which really goes to and what was really funny too, it reminded me when my parents were alive, my mother was constantly trying to lose weight. I mean, ever since I was, I can remember. My dad was kind of built like me. So, we are conscious, but, not. So my mother's thing was they could have like whatever it was, 3 ounces of ice cream, 3 times a week, whatever formula they came up with. So they had a scale. Yeah. And my father, who was a chemical engineer, had measured out the bowl, how much the bowl was. And then, when you put your 3 ounces in, and they would literally measure out exactly, because my father would do it. That was his job. And he would measure out exactly, however many ounces.
Well, actually, you brought up a very
kind of cool,
very smart thing.
Okay.
So when somebody has a food that they don't feel they can control themselves around, whether it's ice cream or chocolate or it doesn't matter, salty pretzels. Sometimes you just can't control yourself around this food. So one of the tips that I give people isn't how to measure or what size bowl to put it in. It's call in the cavalry. Put it in someone else's hand who you know and love and trust and feel comfortable with.
That's a good idea.
Ask them, I'm going to have ice cream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, only half a cup, but I can't control myself around it. Can you please do this for me?
I love that.
So a couple of things are accomplished. One is you get your treat because nobody, eats healthy 100% of the time. 2, you're addressing a weakness that you might have now that maybe eventually you'll have a strength in, but you don't have it right now. And 3, someone who loves and trusts you, who loves you, who wants to help you but doesn't know how, has now been given a very specific way how.
I love that.
So instead of them going, should you really be eating that? Or didn't you have ice cream on Monday and now it's Wednesday? Like, instead of doing those kind of things because they're trying to help you, you have given them a specific way.
I love that.
So to me, it's super important.
Yeah, and I love that, calling in the cavalry.
Yeah, that's what I've always called it.
That's a great. That is a really. I think that's a great tip.
Yeah, I've got a million of these, but I'll tell you my funny story now
Go
that
ahead.
you've brought that.
Shared my funny story with my family, my crazy family.
We have Oatly vanilla ice cream in the freezer. It's just a little pint, and last night I just really wanted some, and I have a little bowl, and I was going to put like a few spoonfuls in and a couple of dairy-free chocolate chips because we're dairy-free too. And I thought about it, and I'm like, we did have dessert over the weekend. It was my husband's birthday, and should I really? But I really want it. And I thought about it for about 20, 30 minutes because I knew if I had it right away, I'd have it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I sat and thought about it, give myself time to go, well, what is your goal right now? And what are you trying to achieve health-wise? And I allowed myself time to think it out, and I ate an orange. And not only did I eat an orange, but I called on one of my cavalry, my sister, and I said, I really wanted this. I ate an orange. Be happy for me. And I got a message back. I'm happy for you with a little heart because I told her what my struggle was.
Yeah.
I told her what my action was and what I wanted from her.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's really important if you're using people around you to get help to be heart healthy or anything else, they need instructions.
Yes.
And,
yes.
You know.
And I think that's, I love this because I think in so many things in our life, we don't give people specifics.
And they need it.
I learned when I had my daughter and I had a home birth and I had two midwives. And I remember the midwife, she actually made out a list and tacked it to my front door so that my neighbors who kept saying, this is so cool. Like, how can I want to help?
Right.
She actually made a list out of like, okay, you can bring a meal. You can take home a load of laundry. I mean, she had a list. We had people knocking on the door going, okay, let me have your laundry. I'll throw your whites in for you. But I think.
Okay, I went the wrong route because I did not have a midwife who did that for me.
Well, you needed to have a list, girlfriend. But I think my point is it's the same thing with when families are dealing with a crisis, when they are dealing with, maybe a death in the family. And, people it's like, I want to help.
How?
It's so much easier if you can give them specific direction.
Right.
So in this case, I love the fact that you're calling in the cavalry,
Yep.
but you're giving them specific instructions
That's
on
all people want.
this is how you can help, because you know what? People feel so good because it's like, ooh, they wanted me to, she wanted me to send a text back with, yep, that's exactly what you were supposed to do.
Right.
Good job. I can check that off my list.
Exactly.
I helped. I was a good helper.
Everybody feels good about it.
Everybody feels good, yeah.
And the other thing I'll throw out there is if there really is a food that you can't control yourself around and you don't want to call in the cavalry, it would be better not to have the food around.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I tell people my personal story with the food I can't be around. Okay. So I can't be around Fig Newtons. I love Fig Newtons.
Really?
Love them. I'm not a big cookie eater, but give me a Fig Newton.
It's so funny because if I had a thing of Fig Newtons sitting in my house, it would probably sit there for 5 years.
I
I'm like,
eat. I mean, I don't know if I could now, but
Yeah.
I could put away
Polish
a whole
off.
sleeve of Fig
Really,
Newtons
huh?
without a second thought. So I never have them.
Yep.
I can have chocolate sitting on my desk for 10
Yeah,
years and
yeah,
never touch it.
yeah.
So my oldest daughter went to college, and she called me one day and said, Mom, I found a cookie. You would love it. It's new. It's called a Fig Newton. And I thought,
It's new.
I thought, I'm probably a terrible mother because my kid, who's 20,
Didn't know that Fig Newtons have been around
didn't
forever.
know they existed.
Oh, that's so funny.
But yeah, if you can't control
Yeah.
yourself, you can have. Most people can have some other treats in their house and control themselves around. But if there's a specific food and you don't want to call in the cavalry to control that, then it's probably best not to have it. And that's whether it's high sodium, high fat, you're dealing with blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol. You have to think about it. And I know we're all supposed to be strong. I know we're all supposed to have self-control. But, this is real life, the real world. And it's okay to acknowledge I can't right now.
And I think, too, we joke around a lot at the senior center about comfort food.
Yes.
And especially, you're in New England, it's the winter, you know, and I mean, yesterday we had a turkey dinner for Valentine's Day. It's comfort food.
Right.
But I think in general, there's so much psychology to food
Oh,
and eating,
it
and it's
has
a cultural thing. It has, exactly.
Nothing to do with hunger.
No, I mean, 9 times out of 10. And so, there's this whole psychology of not just what we consider at the senior center to be our traditional comfort food, pot roast with gravy and mashed potatoes and meatloaf and that kind of stuff. But a lot of these other foods, we use foods as a comfort, or we use as, I've had a stressful day, so I can have this ice cream sundae because you know what? What's the alternative? Well, maybe I'll have, alcohol. Well, that's not good. So I'd rather have, we justify these things in our head. And, that piece of chocolate or that, fig Newton or whatever your comfort food is for you, whatever your treat is for you, for somebody else, it might be like, well, I could care less about that. But
exactly,
my father-in-law, it was bread. He loved it. I mean, he could care less about the desserts.
Right.
But bread, rolls. I mean, you give him that warm bread with butter. Oh, that was his weakness, and he
everybody's got them.
Everybody
has layers of weakness. But, I do want to address, we all have our favorite foods, and everybody thinks they have to give up favorite foods, right, when they're trying to be healthy. But what I always say is there's levels.
Yeah.
And you can try to improve things every step of the way. So, when Dr. Lovelace was leaving, we had a short conversation about an air fryer. So I have coveted all my patients' air fryers for about as long as they've been out, maybe 2 years, 3 years, and I just bought one. So on Super Bowl Sunday every year for as long as I can remember, I have made deep fried buffalo wings for my husband. It's the only time of the year I've ever fried anything, and I did that. Well, this year I bought my air fryer, and I made my husband air fried buffalo chicken wings. And instead of using 1.5 gallons of oil in a deep fryer and being a billion calories that are going to raise his cholesterol and be a horrible mess, because I don't eat these, for 1.5 pounds of chicken wings, I used a tablespoon of oil, and most of it was at the bottom of the container when it was done. It was one of the most simple things I've ever used for the first time. You just toss them up with the oil. It's literally a tablespoon.
Yeah.
Throw them in a container, push it in, press a button, done. I flipped them halfway through, but super easy. And I changed the health of that food from here being bad to about here being really a much healthier.
What is the premise? I don't own an air fryer, but I'm feeling like maybe I should.
Oh, you should.
But what is the premise behind the air fryer as opposed to? I mean, obviously the health benefits are tremendous, but how is it sort of frying, or how's it tasting like it's frying food if you're not using much oil?
It's high heat.
Okay.
So, the heat is high, and it's blowing, and it gives that crisp.
Oh, so it's a blowing, kind of a blowing
I
system.
even made...
it's like a super convection oven.
Yes.
Okay. Pete, you have one, right?
Yeah. I'm a late convert. I was an oil guy until I gave it up, and then I was like, all right, I got to try something. And somebody gave me one for free, and now I want to get a bigger one because it's not quite big enough.
Mine is, I did 1.5 pounds of chicken wings. It was 3 rounds because you don't want you want each piece to be separate so they have exposure to the air.
Okay.
But I also made dairy-free, non-fried onion rings. They were fantastic.
Okay.
And we were pleasantly surprised because the meal could have gone pretty wrong.
Yeah, could have gone south.
And I picked up my farm share Monday, and last night I made sweet potato fries in the air fryer. I seasoned
Gary would
them
love
up,
that.
Garlic pepper, garlic powder, pepper, paprika. Fantastic.
Really?
So I have taken something that's usually a very high fat.
Yep.
So again, type of fat raises the cholesterol amount of fat, and I drop the fat to almost nothing, and you can avoid the salt and use the garlic powder and the pepper and the paprika. I used a little salt because it was my first time using the recipe, and I wasn't sure. But I always cut that in half anyway. But what fun!
Now, when you get an air fryer, does it come like a crock pot comes with its own little cookbook for some of the basics? Did that come, or do you just go online?
It had a cooking chart for how long you cook everything, but it didn't have recipes.
Okay.
So I just went online. But I'm totally gonna get a
so just
for
for cooking time, Jen, is there any difference between cooking time with if you had made the chicken wings the regular way? Is it shorter or longer?
It was
shorter.
Well, one batch is shorter.
Okay.
But I did 3 batches.
Yep. Okay. All right.
But I could have done that in a deep fryer as well.
Yeah.
And clean up, super easy. Pull the drawer out, wash it.
That was my other thing, because that is my biggest complaint about all these appliances. And I remember when crock pots first came out, they didn't have the kind where you could pull out the actual guts to it. So you had to wash this electrical thing. And it's the same thing with I use an electric griddle when I make French toast or pancakes.
Right.
And I finally found one several years ago where you can unclip the griddle part and just
perfect.
wash that, as opposed to trying to wash it without getting any electrical stuff wet or whatever. But that was my other question about air fryers.
Simple.
How not hard to clean?
Nope. It had a shelf inside, and you just pull it out, wash it. I was done cleaning that up in about 30 seconds. Compared to, the hour
oil
that it would take me to clean out that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and my house didn't smell, like fried foods.
Okay.
Oh, it's so great. So, if you're trying to be healthier, again, there's levels.
Yeah.
And, are chicken wings the healthiest part of the chicken to eat? No, but I just cut the fat down by a tremendous amount and made them healthier for him to eat.
Nice. Well, we'll have to have some, some more air fryer. You and Pete will have to share some recipes as you kind of experiment with it, just so that some of our viewers and listeners, myself included, might want to make that investment. And I have no idea how much does it. Now obviously it depends on the size, because as Pete, it must come in different sizes. What's kind of the going rate for an air fryer?
To be honest, I can't remember what
I think it's like 100 to 300.
I was going to say I'm thinking a couple
$100. But you can roast a whole chicken in some of them.
Yeah.
I think mine was like 140 something.
Okay.
But my next thing, I'm going to try Brussels sprouts in there, because I love Brussels sprouts
Cauliflower,
roasted.
awesome.
Oh, I didn't.
Roasted cauliflower.
See, I think that I don't like some of those things, but I think that I probably would if it was, roasted.
That's my substitute for chicken wings now, roasted cauliflower.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
All right. Well, we could have a whole other discussion just on air fryers, but we are out of time. It is 7:58. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield Masses and WCPC cable channel 15. My guest second hour this morning has been Jen Giffune. Thank you so much, Jen. Jen is a registered dietitian and licensed nutritionist. Jen will be at the Senior Center for her Diabetes Dialogue segment. It's the last Tuesday of the month, and I'm doing my cheat sheet here because I can't remember the date. It will be Tuesday, February 28th. From 1:30 to 2:30 for our Diabetes Dialogue. And I've actually changed the title to Support and Education Group.
Good.
Because Jen had said, as much as a support group, this is also very educationally beneficial.
Right.
And I will close on this note, Jen. I said to my greeter, Sandra Fisher, after you ran the group last month, it was the first time back since COVID hit.
Yep.
So I said to Sandra, which I usually do when we have like a newer or new program, I said, well, what was the tenor of as people were leaving? She goes, people were super excited.
Oh,
she was so great. I learned so much. So and we had 21 people, I think. So we were really happy with that. So please feel free, join us if you have been diagnosed pre-diabetic, you are diabetic, type 1, type 2. Just want to learn more about it, or you are married to or living with someone with diabetes and you just want to learn more. Come together. You don't have to have it yourself. We have lots of siblings or spouses that are doing it as well.
And it's just healthy eating. So anybody really
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. All right, it is 7:59. Again, you're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield Masses and WCPC cable channel 15. Next week, I will be back with Joe Rouse, Director of Public Health, as my guest. And coming on is Chamber Chatter. Is that right? No? Yes?
Everything's Southwick. Chamber Chatter was last week.
Oh, that's right. So, I've got I'm off a week.
Yeah, you're off a week.
Everything's Southwick. We will be back next week.
Every time I see you looking my way, baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat? In the car or walking down the highway, baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat? When you move up closer to me, I get a feeling that's ooh you hear the pounding of my heartbeat? 'Cause you're the one I love. You're the one I love. When I feel you put your arms around me, baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat? Then I'm mighty glad I found you. Baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat? When you asked me to meet your mom, I knew the baby we'd be going far. Can't you hear the pounding of my heartbeat? 'Cause you're the one I love. You're the one I love. All my friends are crying out to meet you. Baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat? Now's the time to go and see the preacher. Baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat? Red bells are gonna chime. Baby, baby, you're gonna be mine. Can't you hear the pounding of my heartbeat? 'Cause you're the one I love. You're the one I love. Baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat? Baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat? Baby, baby, can't you hear my heartbeat?
Underwriting for community